Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Nocturne Society. This is the February edition. Tonight we're going to be talking with a couple of people that I've been trying to get in the studio since October.
Hot demand.
Yeah. I'd like to thank Zach for letting us use the nice Raven studio tonight. Some people have a few strange things happen in their life now and then. Some people have more than their share, and tonight I got a couple people that have had more than their share. With me is Arnie.
Hello.
And Kevin.
Hi.
And they're going to tell us some of the strange things that happened to them, and we're going to start out with Arnie.
Sorry.
So why don't we just start right in?
Okay. First, Cub Scouts was terrible. When I was a Boy Scout. Okay. Kevin and I have talked about this a lot, and then Chad, who's pretty dour, if all of you don't know, slinked into my room one day and said, I am part of the Nocturne Society. Let me hear your stories. And so we tell him all this stuff, and he basically scares the crap out of us and depresses us on a daily basis. But anyway, having said that, Kevin and I talk about things about a lot of this stuff, and we've both come to the conclusion that I think that it's all out there, and only so many people can see it. It's like who you are. Kevin and I are both artists, and we see these things, I think, more often than not, more than other people. We'll get feelings and, I don't know, what would you call it? Impressions. That's really good. That's exactly right. Off of areas where we're like, man, I wouldn't go in there. Something happened in there. Or we both have stories like that. And even when we've and I had a case where I shook somebody's hand where I knew that person was just pure evil. And I think what it is that some people sense this and don't. And I was working with Kevin for about 2 years, and finally we just started talking about ghost stories one night like you always do. And that's it. It just started pouring out. And it's funny because we're both from the Detroit area, not that all the ghosts live in Detroit. But we've seen a lot of things. For me, it all started when I was a kid. A lot of things in our house. Once I was 5, we moved to a house that there were many rooms in that house that were cold and scary and things like that. And a lot of things moved. I had a radio that would turn on and off all the time. My lights would go on and off all the time. I really never saw anything there materialize. So I'll leave those stories for another time. But if you want to talk a ghost and materialization, I can talk about the first time I saw a ghost. What would you rather hear?
You were telling me about you kept those bugs.
Oh, yeah, here's a real good story. And again, I don't know if this is the poltergeist phenomena or not. I don't know if...
Did you kind of set up the story, like where you lived and what type of house it was?
Okay. Kevin's a writer. You're going to find his stories are much more intriguing.
I don't know about that.
My house was dark in the deep, dark area of Detroit, since we were one of the only white families there. Not that I'm a racist. Anyway. Our house is very old. Chad's cracking up over here. All right, so our house was very old, and it was quite scary. Even as a kid, when I was 5, I knew that there were wrong parts of the house. Things would move, and there are many examples of it. One time even we were with 9 guys in the room. Everybody saw something happen. So anyway, what Chad's alluding to is this bug story. I used to collect these large moth sacks. They're like cocoons. They looked like they were made of paper. I think it was a sarcophagus moth. That much is probably wrong. Anyway, it was a rather large moth, maybe about 4 inches across. And I nailed a bunch of them to a board, and I put them up in the attic. And the attic, my room, there was no ceiling. It led right up into the attic, so it wasn't in the greatest of neighborhoods. And the ceiling being gone, you could look at the rafters, and you could see the insulation, and it was really dry and dusty up there. So to dry these moths out, what I did is I had a killing jar. I'd put them in there with some nail polish remover, and I tacked them onto this board.
So it's like people collect bugs and tack them onto styrofoam.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I put them up there, which is just up a ladder, and I set them on there. And my bed was about maybe 13 feet away from it, but it was up in a level in the attic with only about a 4-foot-high ceiling. And I woke up, as I did often as a kid, really sweaty, my heart pounding, the bed moving. I always equated it to like a panic attack, like something was going on in the room, and like my body was going, will you please wake up? So I woke up, my heart was pounding, I was sweating everywhere, and I hear this thump, 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 upstairs, well, actually, right up in the attic, thinking there's a squirrel or something up there, scared to death. I finally get out of bed after about 5 minutes of this going on, and it stops. I think, awesome. Okay, whatever it was is gone. Go to get back in the bed, starts up again. a real kind of violent tapping. Now, I had a lot of things happen in this room, so already I'm coming from a state of freaking out. I climb up this ladder, and I look at the board. I'm looking around for anything, but in front of me is the board where I had attacked those moths. Now, those moths had been up there for about 3 weeks. Now, this is a dead bug, asphyxiated, nailed down through the abdomen, everything, through the wings, to this board, and it had been up there at least 3 weeks, maybe even 4. And there were more than one. They were hopping around. They were flopping. Like the abdomen would come up on the pins and then slam itself back down on the board, and they were all just flopping there. So
like they're alive.
Like they were alive. Like they were trying to fly off the board. Okay, that scared the crap out of me. But see, the thing is, a lot of weird things happened in that house. So I don't know if it was ghostly or not. I don't know if it was... Because a lot of things that would happen are the things I would say to myself, my God, I hope this doesn't happen, because it would scare the crap out of me, and then it would happen. So either something was there feeding off it, or it was me doing it. But the first time I saw...
Psychic.
Yeah, I don't think I'm psychic. I think I think I see things other people don't.
Well, that's a theory. When you're younger, you cause things to happen.
I believe it.
When you're a teenager, especially with problems.
Sexual tension? Are we going back to the Cub Scout stories? No, okay. Yeah, I never saw anything materialize there, but there sure were a hell of a lot of bad feelings there. I know a lot of stuff had happen in that house. My mother saw a psychic one time, and she explained all the things that were happening, mostly to me. She hadn't seen anything happen before, but when the psychic described to my mother that she saw something in the house before my mother even mentioned it, and my mother said, yes, my son says there's something there, but I've never seen something happen. And the psychic said, well, it's not really a spirit. The psychic said... Well, since this is a Nocturne society and pretty much you can buy anything, the psychic said it was a troll and it had been there long before man had approached the area, and we parked our house right on top of where it lived. That's a bunch of crap.
Were you living on a bridge with little goats?
No, but it did used to be a big swamp, and all the houses were sinking. But other than that, I can turn you over here to Kevin. He's got a lot of good stories, but we can talk about actually seeing physical,
yeah, I think that's what
later.
When everyone thinks of ghosts, I think they're thinking of an actual floating apparition, although I'd say that's like 5% of what it is. Mostly it's sounds and feelings.
See, I'd equate that to spiritual energy, but also I think like the very first time I knew that I might be doing this, I was 8, and in our bathroom there was a lot of holes in the wall. It wasn't the nicest house, and it was a very gouged out area, and a pipe from an old tub was sticking through the wall, and you could see maybe an inch around the pipe, and you could see the light through an attic window shining behind it because there was a crawl space behind there. And in that case, I remember sitting there on the toilet, thank you very much, looking at this wall and looking at this pipe, saying to myself, man, if something was back there, that pipe would move. I hope I could just see back into the attic, the crawl space there, where the window, where the light was coming in through the one window we had up there. And I remember the pipe slowly turning, and I realized at 8, hey, this might not be a spirit. It could just be me scaring myself. Is the pipe really moving? Am I imagining it? Well, I wasn't, because I was looking at the special marks on the pipe, like the scratches on the pipe when they had torn it off, and noticing the side of the pipe where the rust was. And as it turned, the rusty part, which was the bottom where the water had leaked, was all the way on the top, so the pipe had moved. So again, I don't know if it was something scaring me, feeding off me, or if during all those times it was something coming from me, just scaring myself.
So that's another thing, too, is they say that if there are ghosts in your house, they feed off your energy, so they try and get a rise out of you, too.
Well, if that was the case, if it was Oh, no, okay, I won't go there with the rise thing. I'm sorry. Kev, go ahead, man. Pitch in with one of your scary-ass monster stories.
With the funny names.
Funny names? Well, the very first weird thing that ever happened to me was when I was real young, I saw a UFO with my mother. But that's something to get into at a later date. But my first kind of ghostly apparition encounter was when I was in high school. And it was homecoming weekend. I was in 9th or 10th grade. I can't remember which grade. And a bunch of my friends and I were at the football game. And after the football game, one of my buddies said, hey, let's go over to my house and we'll, play some cards or a board game or something. And directly across the street was one of the bigger cemeteries in town. And we decided to cut through the cemetery because one of the guys I was with, he was a twin brother, and they lived in the cemetery because their father was the caretaker. And so we hopped the fence.
Cheery family life.
Yeah. We hopped the fence, and we're walking along the blacktop road. It's like a one-lane blacktop road through the cemetery. And it's probably a good, 200-yard walk down this roadway, and it's kind of meandering through the cemetery. And we're talking, and I'm asking the guy that lived in the cemetery. I didn't know him real well. He wasn't one of my better friends. Didn't hang out with him a lot, but my one buddy, Joe, did. And so we were talking like, hey, have you ever seen any ghosts in here and stuff? Because he and his brother used, digging machines to dig holes for the vaults and help their father out and stuff. And he told a few stories that we thought were kind of cool, and we laughed about it and so forth and so on. So we're walking along and telling more and more stories, and suddenly about maybe 20, 25 feet ahead of us, we saw a pair of glowing blue pants.
That's awesome.
And it was like a pair of Levi blue jeans with the bottoms rolled up, and you could see the little copper rivets, only they weren't copper colored, they were blue, and you could see down inside the pants. And essentially, the leg stepped out from the side off the grass. You couldn't see it until it got, right on the roadway.
Like it was behind an invisible wall?
Yeah, exactly. And there were no feet, there was no body, it was just a pair of pants. And it trotted slowly across the road, and then it just disappeared like it had stepped behind another invisible wall, and you could see the one leg kind of disappear, and then the other just, follow through and disappear. Scared the living crap out of us.
So more than one person saw this?
Yes, like 4 people. And we all went running and ran back to the one guy's house in the cemetery, and I never went back into that cemetery after that. And anytime that guy would tell any stories, we firmly believed it, but it scared the living crap out of us.
That's a good one.
That's the blue pants.
They all have names.
The haunted pants.
Yeah. Kevin's stories always start out with, it was a dark and stormy evening. He's very good at that, actually. He pulls you right in. You got to see the expressions. Oh, wait, you guys are on radio. That's right.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah. I got another one for you. I got a good one. Unless you want to keep going?
No, go ahead.
All right. One of the first times, there are many times I've seen apparitions, but a real strong time where I had to stop my car was pretty interesting. I used to work at a place called Taco Plaza. It's a precursor or a competitor for Taco Bell, and this was in Flat Rock, Michigan. It's kind of rural area. And a buddy of mine and I were closing up, and it's a fast food place, and he was the manager, and we used to play D&D together, cards, everything. And he was, let's go back to my house and get drunk. Being the young man in my 20s that I was, I said, cool, even though it's 4 o'clock in the morning. So we take off. Now, he lived on a farm that had been there for over 100 years at least. And we're driving back down this winding road that goes along the Huron River. And the road's really snaky. It sort of goes right along the river. And there was one point, I'm right behind him. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I had a green VW Bug that was just falling apart, which is, all I could afford working at a fast food place. But he was ahead of me about, 5 car lengths or so. Real misty morning. Sun was nowhere near coming up, pitch black, and the mist was everywhere, and there was no starlight. Basically, all you could see was your headlights. We're going down here, and he lives about 20 minutes away, and about 10 minutes in, we're still along the Huron River. We're coming to a point where I see his taillights ahead of me. He's actually a little farther in front of me now. And he made a left, and as I was approaching that, in front of me was a house across the river, if you will, away from the road. Then there was the river. Then this house was on the other side. And you could see these 2 porch lights. And so I realized, even though it was misty, that wasn't a car or anything. I realized the road veered to the left and the river was in front of me. And just as he turned that corner, I swear, I saw a guy illuminated by his taillights who had, if I'm visually describing it, his car was in front of me, I'm looking at the taillights. The figure was on the left side, a man with a dark jacket on, pants. It was all really a blur because the guy was really moving fast. And it looked like he threw his right arm up in the air, and I remember seeing the jacket flap up. It looked like my friend Phil had just missed hitting him. He threw his arm up in the air, and I remember vividly seeing a surprised look on his face. At least the mouth was open because although I couldn't see any features, but he was moving pretty fast. So it looked like he was really surprised, and he threw his right arm up in the air like, oh my God, you almost just hit me. I slammed my foot on the brakes because we were going about maybe 40 miles an hour. I really slammed on the brakes. The road was wet. I slid right past the place maybe 10 feet past the place where I thought that guy was. When I hit the brakes and slammed up, I really focused my attention forward. I could have swore the guy just was gone, had disappeared before my eyes. I thought he fell. So I stopped the bug. It's still running. I get out. It's a misty morning, but it was not that cold out. I get out of the car. It feels like winter. I'm looking around. I look under my car. I get on my hands and knees, thinking I ran this guy over. I look everywhere. I don't see him anywhere. And it was it was one of the most weird times. I don't want to say I was scared, but I really felt the presence of something. So I freaked out, looking around. I go, come on, this didn't just happen. Get back in the car. I'm not really scared, but really freaked.
Well, you thought you just ran somebody over.
I did. I think that was more the reason I was scared than not. And I get back in the car. No, I already know where my buddy Phil lives. So I get there, and he had been there a good 5 minutes ahead of me. I come in. He goes, you look white as a ghost. And before I can say anything, he says, don't tell me you saw a ghost. And I go, yeah. He describes right where I saw the ghost. I go, so you've seen it? And he said, not personally, but many people see the ghost there in the early morning hours. And what had happened was, at least he related it to me, was a man who owned a farm there had he said a 13-year-old daughter. I'm sure these facts can be checked. I've never done it. In his car, and she was choking, and he wanted to get her to the hospital. And it was late at night. And that same house that I had seen with the porch lights, even though the guy lived there, he was panicked. And what he had done is, instead of turning left on this road, I want to say Flat Rock Road, but I doubt if that's exactly the road. Instead of turning left, what he had done, my friend related to me, is he went straight, thinking that those two porch lights were headlights, and he had run the car right into the Huron River, where unfortunately he and his daughter had drowned. And so there have been many accounts of seeing this guy on the road as if he's looking for his daughter, is what he said. I guess that's the poetic part. But maybe it's this guy just had some unfinished business and didn't make it to the hospital to save his own kids. She moved on, he didn't. But I'll swear to you right now, I saw that guy, and it happened.
Well, that's weird, because there's those two kinds of hauntings. There's residual, which is a leftover reaction of, like say he's out there looking for his daughter or whatever. That's just like you're watching a movie. And then there's the intelligent haunting, which reacts to you being there. And that seemed like a combination of both. If it's dodging a car...
It certainly looked like, his mouth was open, his arm was moving. I'm an artist, so I take snapshots in my brain. I can't describe to you what his face looked like. I could draw you a rough, blurry outline because he was in motion and it was foggy. Had I been any closer, I could have got you some detail, but I can't even tell you what kind of shoes he had on.
Couldn't it be something like it just replays over and over? It's kind of like it's a movie.
Well, right, but that usually doesn't interact with,
But maybe that's,
Do you think, but wouldn't that be like him floating in the air and then making it into the water? And you're like, and then just sort of staying under the water, pounding on the window. God, that was graphic. I'm sorry.
Well, that's something I always wonder about. You hear about haunted trains and haunted cars, and why would a machine be haunted? So it's
right. See, that's the other thing. I think,
like you said, like he's in a sitting position, moving down the road.
I think I don't know, Kevin. You can tell me too. I think things move around. I'll be someplace and get a cold chill. And you know how people will say, ooh, I got a cold chill. That was weird. I more or less feel like, ooh, I got a cold chill. I think something just went through me. So,
or you went through something.
Or I went through something. I think things move because, again, in my house, I always felt rooms would be cold and they wouldn't. And I always felt like something was trying to trying to talk to me there. So,
Well,
and I would ask. And here's the thing that Kevin and I disagree on. I talk with whatever I see, whatever I feel all the time. Kevin says, "Man, don't talk to him. Or go home with you."
Yeah.
You wanna...
Well, that's. I had a friend in college, and her sister used to do, poltergeist investigations and stuff like that, and she had quite a few out-of-body experiences and things like that, and supposedly she went to some house that was in Detroit that was having some nasty poltergeist events happening, and contacted this thing, and supposedly it latched on to her, and she supposedly went in out of body and went into and contacted this thing, and it latched on to her and then went home with her. And my friend was saying, that she had a really hard time getting rid of the thing. So ever since then, I've been a real big proponent of not talking to them, not acknowledging them, not telling them to go away or anything like that.
But you can see them. See, that's the thing. You and I have different perceptions of things. You and I notice details. Maybe it's we're an artist. I don't know. But you can see these things. You're kind of denying it. You're like,
no, I'm not denying it.
Embrace the gift, Kevin.
It's there. I just don't want it. I don't want it.
See you. Go away. Oops.
I don't want it sitting in my lap while I'm watching TV.
Well, that's what always makes sense to me. I mean, they always say that some people, they like we were saying at the beginning, some people see them and some don't. And I think it's more like some people don't acknowledge them. And if they get a weird feeling, like my wife, she doesn't care about any of that stuff. And when you ask her what she thinks about ghosts, it's always, I don't doubt there's something there. I just want nothing to do with it.
But she saw something, though.
She did see something. But you think about it from the ghost perspective, you're going to talk and try to interact with someone that's listening rather than someone that's ignoring them.
You can later on tell your story about the old workplace and what happened when you were talking to that one.
I think the new workplace one is equally as creepy.
Yeah, well,
I think it's probably the same one.
Well, I would love to stick. We'll get on that, but I would love to stick with this thing about spirits attaching themselves to things, which we just recently heard.
Yeah,
because Kevin's got a great story about a carousel horse or a rocking horse.
Rocking horse. I was just telling Chad this earlier. My wife, when she was married before she hooked up with me and got married to me, and she has 2 daughters from a previous marriage, and the oldest, her name is Michelle. At the time, she was like 4 or 5, and they were living out in Auburn Hills, Michigan, with her husband, and her husband was a apartment manager or maintenance man, and so he would go in and clean up the apartments after people moved out, and inevitably everybody leaves crap behind. And he was like this type of person who would grab anything and stick it down in his basement and then fix it up and sell it or have a garage sale or something. He was like a pack rat. Well, some people moved out and they had thrown out an old rocking horse, one of those kind of plaster ones with the springs and the metal legs that the springs are connected to, and it has the wood dowel where the kids hold on to it by the head. And he brought that home and he cleaned it up and painted it and got rid of some of the rust that was on it and so forth. And then they took it up into Michelle's bedroom, and Michelle was only 4 or 5 at the time, and they put her on it, and she was having a good old time. This is all according to my wife. I didn't, have anything to do with this or see anything. But they put Michelle on it, and she was rocking and having a really good time. Was really happy and having fun. And they decided to go down and get their camera, so they started taking pictures of her on this little horse. And within about 10 minutes of Michelle rocking on the horse, in the pictures, I saw the pictures. They've been stolen since then. We had a break-in and we lost a lot of stuff. But you could see on Michelle's face in the series of pictures that at first she's really happy, and then she gets this kind of perplexed look on her face, and then this horrified look on her face, and you can tell she just wants to be off. And my wife said that, they took all these pictures and they finally picked Michelle off the horse, and she didn't want to, after that, she didn't want to sleep in her bedroom. She didn't want to play in her bedroom. And her stepfather, he told her that she was going to have to stay in there and would close the door at night and stuff, and it was terrified, the poor kid. She was scared crapless of this little rocking horse. And they went and took the pictures in to get them developed, and when they got them back, they're looking at the pictures and realizing that as Michelle's face is getting more and more horrified, the horse, the face of the horse, the eyes are turning this, getting evil looking, and it's starting to sneer, and it's baring its teeth, and it's just looking really evil, and it almost looks, according to my wife, demonic. And so they got rid of the horse right away after that, and they put it out, and some poor sap took it. And their poor kid is probably horrified.
Should have had a ritual destruction of it, is what they should have done.
But after that, Michelle was fine. She would go back into her room, so there was something wrong with the horse. And I'm a real big believer in that.
It's too bad you lost those pictures.
Yeah.
Convenient, I'd say.
Yeah, real convenient. But
put them on the website.
Yeah.
But I'm a real firm believer in that, demons, poltergeists, spirits can attach themselves to inanimate objects and will remain with that object no matter where it goes. And so that's why Arnie doesn't agree with me. I don't buy anything that's antique.
Oh, that's true.
I don't buy anything that's old, jewelry, furniture.
See, but you've mentioned this too, like you'll get a feeling off of something, and I won't buy anything I get a bad feeling off
yes.
of. So
I get that a lot at Pier 1.
Do you really?
Yeah.
But it's all... Oh, isn't that all made in...
I was telling Chad this today.
Really? Isn't that all made in, like, India and...
Yeah, but, they'll have some stuff from Jamaica and Africa and stuff, and every once in a while, you pick up something, and you just
bad
get
juju on it.
You get that bad vibe, and it's like, and you want to...
If anyone from Pier 1 is listening and would like to cut me a check, I can edit that out.
Oh, I like Pier 1. My wife and I buy a lot of stuff there, but at the same time, they do carry a lot of stuff from... parts of the world.
Third world countries.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I buy antiques. I like them. And it's funny, Jill doesn't know this, and if she hears this, she's going to find out. But I touch everything that we're going to buy and bring home.
What do you mean?
I touch it in a special way. I try to get a feeling of it. And I'm not saying I'm some psychic hotshot.
Oh, just to see if you have a feeling.
Just to see if I get a negative feeling off it. For instance, a really good example is, and Kevin's got a really good story about when they were buying a house and something he felt and found out that actually something happened in the house. But before he relates that story, possibly, when we bought the house that we're in right now, as soon as I walked in that house, I only got this feeling one other time, which I won't describe, but I felt like this was home. This was it. This was a safe place to be. I don't get that many, especially the older houses I go in, there's always something there. There's always a room where I'll see a doorway that will get my attention, that'll almost like draw me to look at it. I'll walk into the room and get the cold shivers and know something's in there. And not, contrary to popular belief, it's not always the basement. It could be the living room. I mean, it changes. But this place was wonderful. I felt very, very, very safe. And it turns out we bought the place, and I was packing stuff in the basement. And the basement's open. It hasn't been developed yet, we'll say. It's just a concrete floor, and the walls are open studs with insulation. It's got a sliding door in the back, and then the one stairs in the middle. And they're wooden stairs still. They haven't been carpeted, so you can just see underneath them. There's like a 1.5 inch gap. I was putting stuff back there, and I see, and nobody else was here, I see footsteps walk by that gap.
You mean a shadow?
A shadow of footsteps, pardon me, yeah, because it was backlit by the open sliding doors. I right away noticed these feet moving. Now, I still didn't get a bad feeling. And for a long time I didn't tell my wife about this, so I walked in the middle of the basement and did what Kevin has said I'm not supposed to do, and I addressed it and said, only my family is allowed to be here. Whether you're good or bad, it doesn't matter. You have to leave. I'm sorry, but this is our place now.
And it didn't go away, did it?
I opened the screen door, and I opened the sliding door as sort of like a symbol and said, you have to go now. and I shouldn't have done this. This is the part where I threatened it, and I said, if you don't leave and I see you again, I'm going to somehow find out a way to destroy energy and get you out of here permanently.
You're going to
so
call
just
me.
Go. Yeah, call the Nocturne Society, and they're going to kick your ass. But so I shut the door. I don't think it left. I still get feelings from the stairwell. The door will be open a crack where the cats go. But I do know this. Whatever it is perfectly docile and not harmful in any way, shape, or form. I get the impression that it's an Indian. I don't know why, but I'll just say it because it's on the top of my tongue. And I really do, and I think it means no harm. And
a Native American?
Pardon me, yes.
Not
it is a Native American.
Yeah, not someone from India.
Not someone from India. Pardon me. Yes.
There are a lot of mounds around here.
I that's the archaeologist in me. I want to dig those things up so fast and say, look what they get, what how they live. Oh, look how they did this stitch. I'm a retard. I'm sorry, I can't. But anyway, the thing is, so these impressions, Kevin, if you'd like to relate that story, that's an awesome one about the child and the bad feeling in the corner by the window kind of thing.
Oh, that apartment.
Yeah.
Before we bought our home, we were this a few years back here in Madison, and we were looking for a new apartment. We were tired of where we were living. There had been some violence, a couple of gang-related things. Not that it was a bad area. It's really actually a nice area, but we decided we just wanted to get out of that area, and we were worried about our daughter going to school and stuff. So we started looking for an apartment, and the manager who had run our old apartments, she had left, and we really liked her, and she'd gone to this other set of apartments. And they're actually very ritzy apartments, very expensive. And so we went over to see her, and she took us up to one of the more expensive apartments in the complex. Really gorgeous, beautiful, beautiful apartment. All wood floors, blah, blah, blah. And so we're walking around looking at it, and it's really, really nice. And we go into what would be my daughter's bedroom, and there's a bank of windows along the wall. And then off in the corner, right by the windows, was this little nook that had a computer table where you would set a computer and had a little desk of drawers and stuff like that, built right into the walls. And it was backed up to a window. And so there was only like maybe 2 or 3 feet, maybe 3 feet of space between the desk and the window. And we're on the 3rd floor, and it's a long drop down. And I swear to God, while I'm standing there, I got this vibe that a little kid had fallen out of that window and died, and that it was still there. And I turned to Deanne and my wife, and I said, I'm getting a bad vibe about this place. I don't think we should take this place. And the manager was giving us a really good deal. My wife really wanted it bad, but I kept telling her I don't want Haley in this room. I just get a really, really bad vibe about that area over there, and I know Haley's going to be always over there. So we left, and later on, we ran into the manager, and we were talking to her, and sure enough, some little kid had fallen out of that window years before. And so I'm a real big believer in that. If you just get a bad vibe about a place, when we were looking for homes, you could walk into a home and you get this vibe, and I just like, nope.
I totally agree. Totally agree. Do you think maybe, like that kid, you got that vibe, you say, and this is what I often think too. Do you think that kid actually just told you a story? He was sitting there talking to you or trying to relate it to you, and you caught it, and you got it. So I think you're a ghost whisperer in your own right there, buddy, and just haven't...
I don't know about that.
I don't want to listen. Go away. I don't acknowledge you. All right, back to ghost stories. I don't know. Really quickly, we've been talking a long time here, but I guess we could talk about the one at the old place, at the old business.
We're not leaving until we hear Limp Boy, too. So.
Okay, yeah, Limp Boy.
Oh, that's long.
You got to hear Limp Boy after this one. I used to sit at the end of a row of cubes. I'd say of about 20 cubes, and they were back to back. So if you picture 10 cubes on one side, 10 cubes on the other, and a rectangular hallway, and there were also in a rectangular room, and there were offices dotted all along the walls. So if you just picture that in your mind, I was at one end of it in a small cube that actually was smaller than the rest and jutted out about 1.5 feet, so everybody got to look at my cube whenever they walked around. It was just wonderful. But I worked a lot of late hours. We all did. And always, after 3 o'clock in the morning, things would start to happen. And at least 15 occasions where sounds and things would be moved, and I wasn't the only one who heard them. Kevin will attest to this too, and he can chime in any time. The first time I heard it, it was 3:15 because I was I wanted to go home. I only lived across the street 3 minutes from work. I heard in a cube, a guy, his name is Corey, you don't know his last name, but in Corey's cube, we'll say it was 5 cubes away from me and on the other side, and I yelled out, "Corey, you're here?" And I heard some keys moving. I go, "Dude, I'm the only one here. You want to go get something to eat?" No reply. So I walked around the cubes, went over to where Corey's cube is. Nothing there. Didn't even get an impression, didn't get a feeling. But then on the other side of the cubes, where I couldn't see, I heard some papers move. And that's when I got the feeling. Obviously, something's in there messing with me, and I knew right away it was a spirit. And I knew right away it was just being mischievous, because it was deliberately messing with me. I ran around really quickly to where the papers were, and on the other side of the cubes again, I heard another noise. So I didn't get a whole lot of bad feelings from this thing, so I yelled out, "Cut it out, I got work to do," knowing I wasn't speaking to a human. Back to my cube, started working, and it happened a lot more that night. So I put my headphones on, I turned up the music, and I got nothing. So in other words, I knew I was done with it. I knew I wasn't playing with it anymore. Kevin's going to, I'm sure, chime in with some stories here in a second, but aside from all the things that happened, the boxes being moved, and I was there with Jim one night, and he had heard it too. And the second after this one loud noise happened, I said, "Did you do it?" He said, "No, I thought you did it." I said, "Come out here." And then
Wasn't that when the box fell?
This was a big, giant box. It was a stack of boxes. They were shoved down into another box. And I don't mean like if it fell off or nothing. That wasn't the case. So somebody or something had moved 3 or 4 computer monitor-sized boxes and shoved them into another box, a good 1.5 feet into the box, and bowed the box on the bottom. There's no way that could happen on its own, physically. But the quintessential sighting, we'll say, of this thing was one early morning about 3:30, between 3 and 3:30, I really don't know the time. I'd gotten up to get a pop. You throw some more caffeine in me to keep me working. And walking back to my cube, I heard a giggle. And if you think about these 10 cubes on each side, it was about 7 cubes down, 2 or 3 cubes away from where I usually sit. I looked back to my left. As I turned to look, my view became just at my shoulder where I could see the hallway at the end of these cubes. And I heard the giggle, and somebody walked across. Now, this something, was about 4 feet tall. I immediately thought it was a little girl. I thought it was a little Mexican girl, because the cleaning crew sometimes stayed late, never as late as 3 o'clock in the morning, to clean up after big meetings and things like that. They had a lot of work to do. And I thought to myself in an instant 2 things. 1, why would they bring their daughter to work? And 2, why would they let her run around while they're doing all this work? And then it dawned on me, what I just saw wasn't human at all. It was a spirit. And within that second, not even a second had gone by, I thought all these things, and I really focused on what I just saw in my mind, trying to pick out those glimpses. Kevin and I have talked about this. We're artists. We sort of can glimpse something and really get a lot of detail out of it. What I saw was 4 feet tall, had long black hair. Whatever it was wearing was kind of baggy and brown. I equate it to clothing, but like handmade clothing. And what I saw was an old woman's face, a very wrinkled old woman's face. And it was an Indian. Not to dwell on that thing, like I think I got one in my house and I saw one at work or anything, because there's been a lot of other instances.
Followed you home. I told you not to talk to it. You fool! This
thing was either a little girl or an old lady, and it was 4 feet tall, and that's what was bugging us the whole time there. When I saw that thing walk by, or the entity, I'll say, it was smiling too. Again, another one where I felt no pressure from. It would be a little eerie from time to time, and Kevin will attest to that. The thing would actually follow me into my room, and in the daytime, because I would give it the most attention. A lot of things would happen in my room.
Because you would talk to it.
Because I would talk to it. If I didn't pay a lot of attention to it, I have a lot of 12-inch figures in my room. I have a lot of toys. We design anyway, I won't get into that. But I have a lot of toys and things in my room. Some would fall over all by themselves, and sometimes
lock your door.
Yes, I didn't want to go there because nobody's going to believe that. But here's the thing: I had a lock on my door. One of the few when they finally moved me to an office, I had one of the few offices with a lock on my door. And often I would listen to very loud music, but you want to use headphones because you don't want to bother anybody. Often I'd get up, go to open my door, and it would be locked. It happened way more on so many occasions, at least 6 to 10 occasions. You'd get up and you go to open the door, and the darn thing would be locked. Now, you'd think I could hear that, being as it was 3 feet away from me. The only time it would happen is when I was really distracted, really focused on I was working, and had my headphones on. And then again, I don't know if we're talking, maybe I'm doing it. I didn't think I was, but it would mess with me a lot.
I'd seen things walk by my office door.
I'd seen things run by mine.
Yep.
You know, and the thing is that Arnie's been with the company for 3 years, and I've been with it for 8 years. And, you know, as an artist in the computer game industry, you pull a lot of late hours. And that stuff would always happen between 3 to 3:30, like Arnie said.
Yeah.
And when Arnie told me the first time, his first encounter with it, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's the ghost. And a lot of us would always talk about it because, just like you said, you'd hear typing in a cube and you walk over there and there's nobody there. Or you'd hear papers rustling, or you'd hear footsteps run by your office, or you know, out of the corner of your eye, you'd see something move real quickly past your office door. I would always, when I was there late, I would always turn my music up real loud. I don't use headphones. And because the office behind me, Brian's office,
yes, mm-hmm.
I would always get this, like, knocking on the wall. And
Nice.
It would scare the crap out of me because the one time I knocked back on the wall thinking Brian was in there, and he worked late a lot, and so I figured, oh, he's in there. And I kept hearing noises from that office, so that kind of assured me, oh, somebody else is here. And so I knocked back on the wall after hearing it knock a couple of times, and I knocked back on the wall, and it knocked back at me. And so I'm like, oh, you know, Brian's here, so I'll get up and go and say hi to him. And I got up, walk in there, and the office is dark. He's not there, and there's nothing in there.
Who's playing with you first?
Yeah. And so then I realized I'm the only person in the company. And, you know, I just decided to leave. And then when Arnie's talking about how he used to talk to it, I would always tell him, don't talk to the damn thing because of what my friend said in college. And then it kind of latched on to him. So one night, I'm there about 3:30. I'm getting ready to leave. I'm the only one in the company. And in order to get out of the offices, you had to walk by Arnie's office. And then, you know, it's dark in his office, and his door is open. And as I walk by, I hear what sounds like 2 empty pop cans being lifted and then drop back down on the desk. You know, and it's like that, ting, ting, like it's kind of rolling around.
Settling.
Yeah. And so I stopped, and I poked my head in the office, and I'm thinking, you know, there's nobody in here, and I wanted to see if there was any pop cans in there. So I flicked the light on, and sure enough, here's 2 of Arnie's Diet Coke cans, empty, sitting right by his monitor. And that scared the crap out of me. And then one other night, I was leaving late, and I was one of the last people to leave. And you know that feeling you get when something's behind you?
Oh, yeah.
I hate that feeling.
Yeah.
I was whistling. And I was whistling this tune.
Did you watch a horror movie, Kevin? You never whistle.
You're the first one to go. You're the guy in the first 2 minutes that gets X in the monster
but I'm
movie.
whistling this old tune. I don't remember what it was. But all of a sudden, it's like, you know, it's like when I was getting ready to take a breath, so I'd stopped whistling and was pulling in another breath to continue the tune, and there's this...
You never told me this.
Yes, I did.
You did?
Scared the living crap out of me. You know, the hair on the back of my neck. I was like, oh, holy crap! And I got the hell out of there quick. And there was times where I would jump in my car. Remember I told you that?
No.
Where I was certain the thing got in my car with me?
No, you never told me that.
Well, Have you ever been sitting there with your car warming up, looking at the office?
Yeah,
front,
I would do that.
And you see things moving around inside.
I do that all the time. Because I would always think I would always leave, and it would always stay. There was a chamber door, sort of. There were these two double doors, and outside of that was an area about 15 feet by 10 feet, and there were 3 doors in that area. That thing would never go past that area. I always knew it would stop at that because I felt as soon as I passed through that threshold into sort of the pre-chamber area to get out, it would never go past that. So what I would always do is sit in my car, except for
in the
Kevin.
car with Kevin.
I loved it. Loved your music.
Yeah, but you stopped. You finally took my advice and stopped acknowledging it.
Only because in my room it was getting a little hairy.
Yeah, then it started latching onto me, and it would
that's
flick
right.
at my
you kept
hair.
Saying, no, it's bugging me. Call it back.
It's like it was flicking at my hair. I'd be sitting there working, and late at night, and you'd get this feeling like something was playing with my hair.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that's when this happened maybe 2 or 3 times where I was positive the thing had gotten in my car with me and was sitting in the back seat. And then you had to leave the parking lot and you go down onto Mineral Point and then got onto the Beltline, and I'm heading out. Yeah. Wet out east on the Beltline, and you had to pass by the offices. As I passed by, that's when the feeling went away. It could go that far, but then it had to jump back to that.
It never got in my car, and it would always leave there. And
I'm surprised it didn't follow you back to your apartment.
No, I used to say goodnight to it all the time. Good night. All the time.
Well, when I'd sit
at tomorrow.
At my desk, I had that stupid little lamp behind me, and I'd be working, I got the light from the lamp behind me up on the wall, and I'd see shadows passing in front of the lamp. And I'd look back. Is that light?
See, that's interesting.
It seemed like the light's flickering.
You think about apparitions now. If we talk, scientifically, now light is energy. What's going to pass in front of it? Is it really going to need something solid to diffuse it and to cast a shadow, or will it actually be, can energy actually displace the light? So that's interesting. I mean, from a scientific point of view, can a ghost cast a shadow?
Or was it just...
maybe it was draining the light.
Well, right. Maybe it was...
it ate the light.
The light was, dimming and coming...
Gonna need a bigger
it was a black hole!
Well, when I was talking to the people on the forums on my website, which everyone should go to...
Boom, boom, boom.
They were talking about using a compass.
Ah.
They said it works as an EMF meter, and it'll sit there and go crazy when paranormal activity is happening. Ever since they told me that, I sit at my desk at night with the compass sitting there.
Uncle Bob?
I walked around the house with it, and it would fuck up. It would
That's okay. I said retard earlier.
It's my show.
FCC.
Yeah. It would. I could actually find a line in my house where I could sit on one side and it would point north, and then I sit it on the other side and it would turn around and point the other direction. So I said, this is obviously because of electric current and stuff in the house. Yeah. And they said I said, so how do you investigate it all with this thing? And they said, well, you wait for it to spin uncontrollably. So far, I haven't had it spin uncontrollably, but
I don't know. Just going,
we should all go
back of Kevin's car and sit next to the ghost that's in there and watch it.
But yeah, then you had something happen here after we moved to this new building.
I did. I don't want to take too much time away from Kevin's Lint Boy story. That's a good one.
I'll make it quick.
All right.
How do you make that story quick?
I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
Anyway.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. Well, that's another show. Okay, real quickly.
Arnie took his shoes off. Now we're going to die.
Yeah, it's going to attract another kind of spirit. So, to describe the room that we're in, it's awesome. It's got about a 15-foot ceiling, a sea of cubes in this large square room, and again, there are offices all along, dotting all along that. And there's one entranceway, and you can sort of walk down one edge of the cube, where all the cubicles are, one edge of that square, and walk all the way down, maybe, say, 10 offices. And
along the doorways of the office.
Along the doorways of the offices, and then my office is along one wall. So I have to walk along one of those walls where there's offices to my right, and a whole sea of cubes to my left. Brand new building. We've been here maybe 5 months or something. And working again late at night, not so often as before, but it was about 3 o'clock in the morning.
She hitched a ride in my back seat.
No, she might have, because some of the rooms have motion sensors on them. And as you walk by them, if you don't block that motion sensor, the light will automatically come on. If it doesn't sense any movement within, I think, 8 or 10 minutes, it shuts off. It's a great saver thing, so nobody will leave their lights on. And I go to get a pop, and I'm coming back, and I'm walking along these cubes to my left, and the offices to my right. All the lights are off, except for the dim lights over the cubicles, and I can see my office light on over all these cubes. So I'm walking, and ahead of me, about 5 or 6 offices ahead of me as I'm walking in that direction towards it, a light comes on in the corner office. And then I go, whoa. And then another light went on approaching me. In other words, the 5 offices away, the light went on. And then 4 offices, that light went on. And then 3 offices, 3 lights came on towards me. And finally, the 4th light, 1 office in front of me came on. Now, I didn't set these off. Occasionally, you can walk by a room and set them off. I didn't set them off when I went to go get a pop. So as I walked by them, they didn't even go off. Now, on my way back, just then, though, when the last one came on closest to me, I felt like, and I'll describe it to you since I really didn't, I wrote these guys an email about it and asked if they sensed anything. I felt like something flew through me, my upper torso, flew through me from behind to forward. Even though the lights were coming forward at me, I felt like something flew over my head. I felt like something swooped down into me. From my elbows to my head, whatever it was, flew right through me because I got all these chills, and it was so physical, the most physical thing I felt like that ever. I went, oh, and I went, oh, and then I yelled out, you bastard, leave me the frig alone. And I went back to my room really mad and said, you're not allowed in this room ever, and shut the door. I felt kind of violated, to tell you the truth. And since we're putting all our cards on the table here, I'm going to tell you right now, it was extremely physical, even though I didn't write it in there. I've been shocked by electric current before. I don't know if you guys have, but you know how you break out in that instant sweat? Uh-huh. Right when that thing went through me, I think it was more of a adrenaline thing. But wham! I was instantly sweaty, and I was furious that it would do that to me. I was really angry. I didn't... It was kind of menacing, to tell you the truth. I didn't get this thing like it was going to kill me or anything.
Those office lights are really annoying.
Yeah, they are.
But it's creepy that it was turning on like something was walking towards you.
It really was. That's exactly what happened.
I can imagine just standing there as the lights going click, click,
well,
click,
it
click,
stopped
click.
me. The first one went on, I went, huh. The second one went on, that's when I stopped walking. The third one went on, I was like, okay. And the fourth one, it skipped an office, and the fourth one was like, I could have set that off if I walked 2 more paces forward. And the fourth one went on, I went, oh, God damn it, something's... And before I could say anything, the swoosh went through me, and I was just furious.
Rick's office, the same thing. Yeah. I sit there, and he was gone for a week, and it's turning on, it's turning off. And I don't know if you've been in Rick's office, but the sensor's behind the door. Oh. So you have to open the door up and peek your head around for it to turn on. And it's turning on, turning off, turning on, to the point where one of the guys came over and said, is Rick here? Why does his light keep turning on?
Yeah. And they are not set on timers, by the way. That's a bunch of crap. That's something our manager said. Well, they're set on timers. Well,
yeah, they're not on timers.
They're not on timers. Kevin, give us Lint Boy.
Well, it's kind of a lengthy story.
Which is pretty much every story Kevin tells.
Yes. It was a dark, cold...
But they're good. They're very descriptive.
When I was living in Detroit, and I was working for a small role-playing game company, and at the time I was living out in Royal Oak, and in order to go to work, I had to drive like 20, 25 miles. And as you know, Detroit traffic sucks. Oh, yeah. Sometimes. Not like L.A. or anything. But, so my boss, he had bought this second house on St. Lawrence, which was 1 street over from Lanyo Avenue, which was right off I-94. And it's on the border of Dearborn and Detroit. And it's not a great neighborhood. It's an old Polish neighborhood, and a lot of Arabs are moving into that area now, and it had been then. Oh no, it's everybody. They say it's like Lebanon. That's why they like it, because they say it's like Lebanon. The old Lebanon, not the crappy one now.
Is there a good part of Detroit?
Yes,
yeah.
Detroit
Wow.
is in the suburbs. We're both from there, and we might trash it here and there, but Detroit is wonderful. I love Detroit. I think where we're living now is 10 times better. I wouldn't raise my kids downtown Detroit, but growing up there was awesome. The clubs, the food, the people, absolutely.
So my boss bought this house, and it was a 2-story home. It was built like around 1900, and it had maids' quarters, and it was like a 2-family home. You could have a family live upstairs, and a family live downstairs, and they each had maids' quarters. It had a full basement and the basement walls were like that. Those field stones, the kind of roundish field stones with mortar in between. It wasn't brick. It wasn't cinder block. It was
Does it
those
call it
old,
river rock or something?
Yeah,
like
they're smooth but multicolored stone. It had a concrete floor, and it had an old furnace that you had to fill with water every night, or it would, the thing would break, I can't remember what you call that.
You mean it was a radiator system with steam?
Yes.
And you had to fill it up every night?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's cool. Get the ghost to do that for you.
Yeah. So my boss bought it for an employee that he'd hired from New York who couldn't drive. And so he lived on the ground floor, and my boss asked me if I wanted to move into the upper flat. And I said, no, I kind of like it out in Royal Oak, but, it's really expensive out there. And I was paying like $1,200 a month for an apartment out there. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll give it to you for $300 a month. So I said, well, I'll go and look at it. And I didn't especially want to move back downtown.
Move in with your boss.
Well, no, he lived over in another house about a block away. And the reason why he bought this house is for the guy from New York, so he could just walk to work, because they worked out of their home. Their whole business is out of their home. And so I drove down there, and my boss took me through the place. And we went upstairs, and it had a formal dining room that was basically the size of a living room, and then a front room that was really nice and big, and I thought it would be perfect for my drawing table, and it had a bank of windows, natural light coming through. It was really nice. A kitchen, the sink and stuff was really old, and it needed a lot of work. It needed a linoleum replaced, and I put new tile down and stuff. But the very first thing, when I walked in, I got the impression that a little boy, had been either tortured there or killed there. And it was a really strong feeling, but it kind of quickly went away. And so it was just a real flash feeling, but it went away so quickly I didn't really pay much attention to it. So my boss asked me if I wanted a place, and I said sure, and it had 2 bedrooms, and so it was a nice big place. And, it had a 2-car garage out in the back, a fenced-in yard so I could get a dog if I wanted to, a nice big yard. It was on a corner lot. So I, did some work on the kitchen and stuff like that, and ended up moving in. And about 2 days later, I had a washer and dryer delivered. About 2 days later, I had to wash some clothes, so I went down the basement for only the second time, because the first time I went down there with my boss when he was showing me the place. And it was about 10 o'clock at night, and I carried a basket of clothes down there, and I'm loading up the washer, throwing clothes into the washer, and off in the far right-hand corner was an old, somebody had built like a little wooden room, and it was just, they had put up some wooden walls, and it had a wooden door, and it had one of those kind of latches that like a gate would have, it kind of sits in a little groove, and then you lift it up.
Oh, like that. Yeah.
Sure. Mm-hmm. It had a little handle on it, and you lift it up, and then you can open the door. Well, inside there was a bunch of shelves that they had put up, and it was painted gray, and there was an old coal door. The first time I'd walked in there, I got the distinct impression that this little boy had been locked in there a lot, or had been killed in there. And I didn't like the feeling of the cold door. So I didn't like going in that room. I was going to put some stuff and store it in there, but I didn't. So I'm sitting there, and I'm loading up the washer. And the water's not running yet, so I'm just throwing the clothes in there. And I hear this... And the door of that little room swung completely open and then hit the wall. And so there's a black hole sitting there, and I'm like, down in this dark basement. And the thing is, in that basement, I always got the impression something was behind me. I hated that basement. I couldn't stand it. Always walking through cold pockets. It was just a really eerie feeling being down in that basement. I hated being down there. And being in that little room area was extremely cold. It was always really, really, really cold in that room, even during the middle of summer when it could be a heat wave out. And so I got creeped out by that door being open, so I went back over and I closed the door and latched it.
Good for you. Yeah, yep. There you go.
Latched it, walked back over, and I start throwing clothes back in the washer, and sure enough,
that's great.
And it opens back up fully. And I'm like, geez, so I go back over, close the door, relatch it, shake it, make sure it's seated well, and it's not going to come out. And so I start to walk away. I take about 2 steps and...
Oh, God.
So now I'm freaked out. Something's playing with me or what. So I'm getting really bad. I got that shiver on my back like something's behind me continually. So there's a set of stairs that are going upstairs, and then there's a little landing with the back door, and then you go up another set of stairs, and then there's the first floor with another door that goes out the back with a porch that had a set of stairs that went down. So there's 2 exits in the back. Underneath that landing in the basement was one of those old students' desks. It was one of the wood ones. It was wood, and it was like this cast iron legs
with
and
a
stuff.
chair attached kind of thing.
Yes, and then you could lift up it had like the desk was hollowed out in metal, and it had like the top where you could lift it up and it had the little leg that you could swing out and set, and then you could have your desktop flat and you could store your books inside the desk and stuff. I saw that underneath the landing for the stairs, so I went over and I got it. I slid it over to that room, closed the door, and I slid that desk up against that door, and it stayed there for the next 5 years that I lived. I lived in that house. I never moved it, and eventually the guy that lived on the first floor moved out, and so I was living in that house alone, and I was there for about 5 years, and out of that 5 years, I only had like 6 events happen that kind of freaked me out. 6 or 7 events. One time I was sleeping. It was like about 3:00 in the morning, and there was the front door had a set of stairs that went up, and there was a small landing. Then it made a sharp left turn and had about 4 steps that went up to another wooden door that had a little brass latch, an old brass lock on it. But at the base of the door, there was about 1.5 inches space where you could see into the stairwell that led up to the floor from the front door of the house. And so I'm in bed, and middle of the night, fast asleep, all of a sudden I hear this pounding. Like sounds like somebody's pounding on the front door, and it's like shaking the entire house. And then suddenly it sounds like somebody's stomping up the stairs, and as they're stomping up the stairs, the whole house is like shaking. And I'm like, holy Christ, what the hell is that? Scared the living crap out of me. I jumped up, I grabbed my phone, little cordless phone, and I dialed 911, and they come on. I said, yeah, I think I had somebody break into my house. I grab a steak knife out of the drawer in the kitchen, and I run out into the living room, and the 911 operator's like, can you turn on the lights, see if are you okay? And I said,
if someone's there with a gun pointing at you?
Well, there's a door there. It's like there's a wooden door, and it's got a lock on it.
That would have stopped somebody from coming in.
Yes. It was it was an older wood door, so it was thick enough that they probably couldn't get in, but if they'd smashed against it hard enough, it probably would have broken. So as I'm talking to the 911 operator, I turn on all the lights, and then I flick on the light in the stairwell, and I'm looking under the door, and there's nobody standing there, but there's that corner that leads down from the landing. So 911 operator says, are you sure somebody broke in? And I said, I don't know. And she goes, well, why don't you look, and I'll stay on the line with you. And
I'll protect you on the phone. Go ahead.
I'll jump in front of you.
I've already dispatched a unit to your house. So so I open the door, and I got the knife, and I go around the corner. I peek around the corner, and there's nobody there. The front door is fine. It's not unlocked. It hasn't been kicked open, which it sounded like somebody had smashed it open. and then stomped up the stairs. And the stairwell was right directly above that room.
You know what? You pissed it off. You locked it in there for 5 years. It finally got to come out, and it was mad. Yeah. It was going to show you. It was poltergeisting all the way up them stairs, man.
So that happened like 3 times with the stomping up the stairs. And then a couple other times.
That happened 3 times?
Yeah. 3 different times.
Oh.
Over a span of years. The stomping up the stairs thing.
You think he'd moved out after the first one?
Yeah.
I would have.
No, I mean, come on.
$300 a month? No way.
Yeah. Well, that's what everybody says that. They always say, I would have gotten the hell out of there.
No, I wouldn't.
But then you sit back and you go, okay, in 5 years, I had like 6 or 7 incidents. And only one really, really super scary one, which caused me to leave the apartment for like 2 weeks. So one day, and this is the Lint Boy story. One day,
patented Kevin Long.
Yeah, I was at home and I was freelance. What's that?
I said your last name.
Oh, you bad boy.
Arnie Sweckle said your last name. There, I made it better. Shut up, Chad Boardwell.
Arnie Sweat Knuckle.
They know my name.
Oh. I'm known amongst the Nocturne Society. Everybody knows me.
So one day I'm at home. It's a nice summer day. It's the middle of a week. I did a lot of my artwork at home. And I was, at that time I had a pretty nice stereo system, and I was recording CDs for a cassette for my car so I could listen to music on my car. So I'm sitting there with headphones on because my flatmate downstairs, he had the day off, and he always used to get pissed off when I played my music loud. I was sort of sitting there with my headphones on just in case he was home. More than likely he wasn't. And I was sitting in a chair, and I was leaning forward, and I had my finger on the pause button because the song was getting towards the end. And suddenly I don't even know how to explain it. It was like I was sitting there, and it was like I had passed out. And my chin was on my chest, but I still had my finger on the pause button. But my chin was on my chest. I still had the headphones. I could hear the music playing, but I couldn't move. And out of the corner of my eye, I couldn't lift my head. I couldn't turn my head, but I could look off to the side, and there was something standing next to me. And the reason why I call it Lint Boy is because it looked like dryer lint. And it was maybe about 3.5 feet, 4 feet tall. And so that's where I assumed it was the boy, that I always got that impression that had been in the house. But it was like a dark gray, and it looked exactly like that gray lint you get out of the dryer. And it had a human shape, but it didn't have any defined features. So it like had a head, but it kind of blended into its shoulders. It didn't really have a defined chin or a defined neck. It just kind of blended right into the shoulders. And it had arms and like balls on the end of its hand, where it would be hands. It didn't have any defined fingers, but it raised its arm up. It's what I would call its left arm, and a little protuberance came out of the ball, which would be its hand, like a finger, and it started reaching towards me. And I'm looking at this thing. I can't move, so it reaches out and it touches my shoulder. And I get this electrical shock, like static electricity, only stronger. That instantly released me from not being able to move for some reason. And so I reared back and I looked at the thing, and the thing like kind of stepped back, and it kind of raised its arms up and leaned back like I had scared it. And when it did that, all of a sudden it just, with its arms still up and it's leaning back, it just zoomed. It kind of turned away from me and did a turn with it, and so its back is facing the wall, and it zoomed right into my bedroom, into the wall that led into my bedroom.
More of a floating thing, not like
a
walk.
Yeah, just real fast, right through the wall, and scared the living crap out of me.
Yeah, that's freaky.
Yeah. So this is the middle of the day, and so I'm like, I wasn't doing drugs back then or anything like that, so I couldn't understand what had happened, but it scared the living crap out of me, especially since it went into my bedroom.
I'll be in here waiting for you.
So I shut down my stereo. I set down my headphones. I went in and I packed a bunch of clothes, and I went right outside, locked up, jumped in my car, and I went over to a buddy's house, and I stayed at my buddy's house for a couple of weeks, because I didn't want to go back down there because it scared the living crap out of me. But I ended up going back because I had to get back to work. Wasn't happy about it, but they had a few more incidents. But I'll let Arnie tell one of his stories, and I can always come back to it.
Did you ever see it again?
I never saw Limp Boy again. Never saw it.
But
again.
it continued to do things.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's.
So
I've never heard of anything described like that, though.
Yeah, it looked like lint.
Well, that's why you got the electric shock, the static electricity from the dryer.
From
man.
the dryer.
Yeah, it's dryer boy.
To pull that much, pull that much lint together, man, you're asking for trouble. I don't know. I can't tell you an apparition story, not like that one, but I can tell you an interesting thing is.
You should tell your buddy's story.
Oh, the cemetery
story? The cemetery story.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I have a friend, Phil. As a matter of fact, Phil was much like Kevin. Phil's a very creative guy. He's a writer. And we would have the same conversations late at night like you do with your friends. Well, I saw this ghost one time. I saw that ghost one time. And he described a really good story to me that I'm going to relate secondhand here. And he had named all the people that were with him, and I knew them. But he and his friends had these girls, and they wanted to scare them, so they took them to the local cemetery. And so what they do is they get them to the cemetery and just walk in the cemetery. They get all scared and hang on them, kind of a second date kind of thing back when you're in high school, and get the girl to hang on you, when you're as ugly as my friend Phil. No, just kidding. But he said that he was in the car with these two girls, and they were daring his friend Danny, I'll just say, to go into the cemetery. And he said, I'll do it. And they're like, yeah, whatever, go ahead. So he actually gets out of the car, and he walks one city, like a half of a city block, because the cemetery was pretty huge. I know the cemetery he's talking about. It's very old and hundreds of years old and very Gothic. And he goes in the cemetery, his friend does. And his friend, about 5 minutes later, comes out of the cemetery, and they're like, oh, he did it. Now, they're looking at him from about a half a block to almost a block away in their car and across the street. So he comes out, and he stops, and he looks around. And everybody's looking at him, and they're thinking, what's he doing? Doesn't he see us? We're right here. So he looks around, and he walks about 3 feet when somebody comes out of the cemetery right behind him. And he described him as a man in a suit, sort of like a jacket kind of thing, not like a tie. And he's standing right behind Danny, and my friend said, oh, man, we're busted. He's been caught fooling around there at night, and he's going to bring him over here, and he's looking for the keys and trying to get the car started so they can take off on him. Good friend. They're looking, the girls are like, oh, he's in trouble. So his friend stops, walks about, say, 20 feet, bends over, ties his shoe, and the guy behind him crosses his arms and looks down at him like, yeah, basically like, I'm not letting you go, pal. Just standing over him, looking at him. He gets done tying his shoe, and he gets up and he looks around.
Picks like he can't stick, see. Doesn't he?
Well, yeah, that's actually what happened later on. He looks around again, and then he starts crossing the street to the car. The guy who was behind him with his arms folded stops, unfolds his arms, turns around, and walks back into the cemetery. Danny finally gets to the car, and Phil says, man, were you busted? What did he do? And Danny says, who? He says, the guy that walked you out of the cemetery, man, the guy that was standing right by you. He goes, there was somebody by me? They said, you tied your shoe. He was standing right there. He goes, I wasn't tying my shoe. I saw a stick on the ground. I picked it up. I've never been so scared in my life. I got in the cemetery, the guy says, and I got this feeling, like this really frightening feeling, so much so I couldn't move. So finally, I got myself to back out of the cemetery. I was so freaked out, I forgot where you guys parked. I walked a few feet, and I felt like I was in danger, so I bent over to pick up the stick. I wasn't tying my shoe. And they said, oh, and then he got back to the car and related the story, but my friend Phil and those two girls all professed that they saw this man come out behind Danny, stand behind him, fold his arms, and as Danny crossed the street, turn around and walk right back in the cemetery.
Wow.
I didn't see that happen, though often I claim that story as my own, as we often do. But I believe Phil, because we talked about lots of that stuff, and he even talked about a lot of the things that happened in his farmhouse. That's how we got talking about it. We would play like D&D together. You know, us D&D players, we always see everything. And but before Kevin relates another story, let me tell you something about D&D. I had a bunch of guys over to my house, and there were 8 of them. We're sitting at a table in my room playing, and many things happened that night. And every one of these guys saw it. Everybody shouting, yelling. I don't know if you've done that kind of thing, but there was a closet door to my left. Three of us were sitting on that end of the table, and we heard a knock at the door. I ignored it, and then we heard another knock. And finally, my friend Greg, who was sitting just in front of me, he finally stops talking to the other guy, turns to me and goes, "Are you hearing that knocking?" I go, "Yeah." I go, "Who's in the closet?" He goes, "Nobody's in that closet. Nobody's gotten up to go in there." So Greg turns around, opens the closet door, and there's nobody there. And we heard a definite knock, 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 knock on that door. What it was, there was just so much energy in that room. I think whatever was there was having fun. A friend of mine that very same night, I had a bunch of National Geographics on a shelf.
Sure, they were National Geographic.
Yeah,
Playboy,
I like
Hustler.
those. No, they were National Geographics. I just liked looking at the native women. A friend of mine named Paul, and these are all real names, had telekinesis on his character, and he goes, "Yeah, I wish I had telekinesis in real life." And he points at the shelf, and in front of 8 of us says, "I telekinesed those books." There was about 30 of them up there. The National Geographic on the right fell off the shelf. The whole stack leaned to the left, and 3 or 4 more of them fell off, slid off. And you could have heard a pin drop for about 2 minutes. And they turned and said, "Did that just happen?" And I said, "I told you guys there was a ghost here. I told you." But the quintessential one of that evening is a friend of mine, John, who is probably as pure as any of us was. He's a Bible study teacher, and he's a no-nonsense guy. Man of few words back then, anyway. He went to the bathroom, which was in that same house I related earlier, the one that was kind of run down. And by that time, we had revamped it enough to where we could have company. And John was in that bathroom, and the light had burned out mysteriously that night, and we had no more bulbs. So we would always kid anybody who went to the bathroom, "Don't fall into the tub," big clawfoot iron tub. So we're all talking and stuff, and we hear a ruckus from the bathroom. I mean, really loud, like something dropped, and I thought John tripped. So I got up to go in there, and John came into the front door walked down the hallway and appeared in the doorway of my bedroom. I go, "Did you fall?" And everybody's laughing, and he goes, "No, I don't want to talk about it." And he sat down. So we keep playing. About 2 hours later, John hasn't said much. And John was very born-again Christian, and at that time he was quite zealous. And, "If you guys don't join my church, you're all going to hell." But he was sitting there, and we're all playing and stuff, and all of a sudden he just speaks up. And he says, "I saw something," so we all stop. We go, "What?" He said, "I was sitting on the toilet." Scared to death, he turns white.
It was brown.
And he says,
"Floating."
"Oh, dude." Okay, there goes the story. No. He said, "I was sitting on the toilet. Next to this clawfoot tub, we had a really old stool that my mom had painted red, and on there was the big giant soup pan that you would use to... there wasn't a shower.
They didn't have a toilet.
You would take the water and you would rinse your hair off with it. And it was sitting on there." He goes, "I was sitting on there with the door half open, and there was enough light coming in the bathroom so I could see. That pot," which if you think about the design of the bathroom, the toilet was on one side of the room, the pot and the tub were a good 4 feet across from you. He said the pot flew off of the stool and hit him in the knees. And he said the noise we heard was him getting off the toilet so fast he didn't pull up his pants and he fell over. So he came in the room, and then he sat, and he was white as a ghost when he came in. And 2 hours later, he relates a story to us, and at the very end, he goes, "And I'll never tell that story again." And he never has to this day, I'm sure. But I think all that psychic energy, or all the people were in there, whatever was there, be it a poltergeist thing, be it me or somebody else doing that, it was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Bobby, he and his wife were over. And before they walked out the door, I got them talking about it. And she's like, "Oh, guys, I don't want to talk about this. Come on, let's not talk about this." So he was saying how they've been having strange things happen in the house. And he told me, this was like 5 years ago. And when we went back to L.A. to visit, he said, "I forgot to tell you, after we had that conversation, we went home, and we walked in and we're talking about, and his wife was like, "Oh God, I'm all creeped out now. I wish we wouldn't have talked about that." And he said, then the bulb went pop, and he said, "Oh, how annoying," And he walked over, and he said he was reaching up to take it out of the socket, and exploded.
Oh wow!
And he said he stepped back, and as he stepped back, the sparkle, the stuff from the light, the glasses stuff, fell down what appeared to be the shape of a man.
Awesome.
There.
Well, that's a good one.
So, yeah, they moved.
That's cool.
Yeah, the end of that story is they got out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just it. We were talking about the feelings and the impressions. You really, if you're open to it, I think it might even be intuitive on an intuitive level. I don't know. But if you're open to it, you can get impressions and feelings and all that stuff. And I really, especially the last 5 years, I've been trusting that voice. If it's instinctual or not, I mean, we can go off on, from the voices, we can go off on guardian angels or spirit guides like they say they might be or whatever. I mean, I've heard voices like that before that I really listen to. And that, in the last 5 years, has guided me right. I've been making some great decisions, and everything's been going wonderful. So I don't know if it's intuition or what. And if you trust that, like Kevin says, going in the room and knowing about that little boy and finding out that it's true after all, if you're willing to listen, I think you can hear it. Like your friend, the girl that you were just describing, how she didn't want to talk about it. I mean, a lot of people who say, "Don't start telling ghost stories, you'll scare the shit out of me." And you know what? I'll bet those are the people. If they're open to it, those people will see stuff because it scares the crap out of them.
Yeah, I don't.
It scares the crap out of me.
I know it does. Don't talk to it. Jesus Christ. That's going to do my bills. I like it.
So, do you guys got anything else, or are we wrapping it up?
Well, next time I think we can talk a lot about the out-of-body experience stuff and the guardian. I got some guardian angel stories that'll blow you away, that are 100% true, that I tell my kids. This is all stuff, I don't know about you, Kevin, but I held all this stuff back till I was in my late 30s, and I decided, you know what, I'm old enough. I don't care what people think of me. I'm going to say what I know to be true. Yeah, maybe next time we can. I got some guardian angel stories that'll floor you that everybody I've told to. I tell my kids, you have a guardian angel. If Daddy has one, you have one. Listen to it.
I think I have a guardian demon.
Well, I'm not
hanging out with you anymore.
I think all the dark thoughts that you have, I think your guardian angel is being held down by 6 or 7 demons, and you're all making fun of it while they sit on your shoulder going, "Hey, tell him this, tell him that, he'll listen, go ahead." Your guardian angel's going,
My shoulder angel.
That ain't an angel sitting on your shoulder.
Okay, well, if we done?
Sure.
I think I'm done for tonight, and
we can finish up. I got some more stories about that house, and then I got the spirit that felt me up.
Wow.
Kevin, that was me.
That wasn't
you? Oh.
It was me in a black suit sneaking into your bedroom.
Okay, well, we'll see how Zach takes this. He says it's no big deal to him.
Zach takes it anyway. Okay, that's what I
He said it's no big deal to him using the studio because he just sets it up and leaves. So hopefully we'll be able to do this again sometime, unless y'all want to go down to my basement where I was recording before.
This is fine. Actually, this was pretty easy. Plus, all 3 of us are here. We've told each other these stories before.
Right.
It's kind of weird talking to a microphone, but it's like you're the fourth person in the room. So I hope you enjoyed it. It's a little odd. You look kind of silvery with little bumps on you, and kind of held up by these little rubber bands. But I hope you enjoyed it. And believe it or not, it's up to you. But we know what we've seen.
Well, thanks everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed this one, and sounds like we might do it again sometime. And go to the damn forums. I've got 7 members there.
7.
Okay.
Neither of us are on there.
I still haven't gone to the site. I'm sorry.
I've gone to the site. I just haven't gone on the forums.
So, all right.
Well,
thanks.
thank you.
Thank you. Bye.